We're going to move on and talk with Gary Bullert now. I love talking with Gary, or I should say arguing with Gary, and that goes back a lot of years, goodness sakes. I don't even remember which presidential, or I do remember you coming on the set when we used to do live, coverage of, races, and certainly presidential. Maybe it was with
It was a
Representative
2000. I
Hastings?
tell this story to my class.
Do you? Okay,
It
all right.
was
What
the
was it?
2000 presidential race between Bush and Gore.
Oh.
And NBC News had announced that Al Gore is the next president. So I came to you, Christy, and I said, well, look, in Florida, Bush has 200,000 more of the raw vote. Maybe we should hold off a little bit and not rush to judgment. And then 15 minutes later, they declared undecided.
Wow.
And 15 minutes after that, they declared Bush to be the president. And so you said, well, Gary, you can stick around the station and look at the other results, or you can go home. And so I decided to drive home because I had an 8 o'clock class the following morning. And before I got home, the race was once more pushed in the undecided category.
Oh my gosh. That's great. You've got a great memory too. Wow. All right. Well, Gary has been spending how many years at CBC as a political science professor there?
24.
24 years. Wow. Okay. And I know that you just eat and breathe this stuff. You're always thinking about it. You're always, debating it, I'm sure, with your students and anyone else who will talk with you about it. But so what's going on right now in the presidential sense? I just read something yesterday, I guess it was, that establishment Republicans are starting to go a little really panic stricken that Ben Carson or Donald Trump could be the nominee.
Well, the polls are still holding up that enable the outsiders to be the favorites, particularly in both Iowa and New Hampshire, which is the first two tests. Are getting closer to those caucus states in Iowa, and so they're looking for an alternative to that. And in my view, Marco Rubio would be the heir apparent to take the mantle of the establishment Republicans. But the problem is that I see a lot of friction between Bush and Rubio, and I'm not sure whether he would simply transfer his support over into the Rubio column. So it has been suggested that maybe Mitt Romney could be drafted in 2016.
Where does that come from?
Well, I mean, I saw it on the internet this morning, as a matter of fact,
Okay.
a number of different sites. So, in other words, they didn't reveal who precisely said that, but that's the rumor that's going around.
Well, is there any confirmation that Romney is interested in that? I mean, that seems to me would be step number one.
Well, he hasn't really taken a very visible role yet in the presidential race. He's been basically on the sidelines. He's been interviewed a few times, but in my view, he has the presidential bug. And if he thinks he can win, I see no reason why he wouldn't enter the race.
So, what would that mean? He would enter the race and go through all of the states in terms of the primaries and caucuses? Or, what's the difference between that and then going to the convention and kind of blowing everything up?
Well, the convention situation means that you have delegates that are committed to vote for a certain person.
Okay, so
and then after a few votes, they can change their mind, and you can kind of stampede the convention in one direction or the other. So if there's no one that emerges as the odds-on candidate, gets the necessary number of votes on the first ballot, then it opens up the possibility of somebody else moving into the picture. Now, in my view, Romney would probably not wait for that to happen. I think he would, even after New Hampshire, he could still throw his hat in the ring. You have Super Tuesday in the South, among other places, so there'd be a lot of delegate votes that are still yet to be determined.
All right, well, that is definitely something that we need to pay attention to. I'm going to look for those stories because that sounds really, really interesting. Did you watch the debate earlier this week?
Well, yes, I did.
Yeah, what'd you think about it?
Well, I thought that what's emerging in the presidential race as a core issue is the topic of immigration. And it's interesting to see how various candidates are positioning themselves on that particular topic. And immigration, incidentally, is the issue that Donald Trump front-loaded. And the problem that any other candidate might have is that Trump has taken a position that's as far out as you could possibly get. I mean, he wants to deport illegals. He wants also to build a fence, and the other candidates are supporting in part that whole policy. But you can see someone like Marco Rubio, who does very well in the debates, incidentally. He has the legacy of supporting the Senate bill that was passed in the Senate by 68 to 32.
Mm-hmm.
And he was part of the Gang of Eight that sponsored that on the Republican side.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be very difficult for him to distance himself from that prior position. A key word that people should look for in any statement made by a presidential candidate on the Republican side is the following. Do you put security first? Okay, border security first? Different candidates give different answers to that. So, it's my view that that's one issue that the Republicans could raise. They could pass a bill saying that we're going to enforce the border, and then we can deal with these other issues about people overextending their visas, or people that have been here for 10 to 15 years, or they should be given a pathway to citizenship, so on and so forth. But enforcing the border, closing the border off as the first step in the direction of having a viable immigration policy should be something that would attract a large amount of support.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean, though? I hear that, and without a full understanding of what that means, I think it's kind of hollow. How do you enforce a border, truly, really? You mean by building a wall that is, 10 feet thick and goes 20 feet down into the ground and is 30 feet high? I mean, what are you talking about?
Well, the way Trump puts it is you need to have a fence. I mean, you need to have a way of keeping people from crossing the border with impunity. And we have an open borders policy in effect that has created a large number of collateral problems.
What do you mean an open border? You mean people can cross into the United States by being a guest, or they simply can walk across this imaginary line that is U.S. and Mexico?
Well, you have people getting across on that basis, certainly.
Yeah.
And the difficulty with this is that it's a situation where you have a first world country, the United States, living right next to a country that has a predominant number of people that are living in third world conditions. And if we invited everybody into the country that wanted to move in here, we'd have a serious problem on our hands, because that's a good sector of all the humanity.
Yes,
and we already have
Central America,
25% of the Mexican population living inside the borders of the United States right now.
Yeah.
So I would argue that the Republican candidate who can have a viable solution to dealing with all of these interconnected problems and make that plausible to the American people is the one that's going to be able to prevail in the campaign. I think that's the defining issue at this point in time.
I can't disagree with you, but I think the criteria you set up is pivotal.
Yeah.
It has to be something that makes sense to a lot of people.
Right.
I'm not sure the current one that is the most boisterous makes the most sense to the most people.
Well, there are a number of things about Donald Trump that are problematic, and I gave him a pass on the Carly Fiorina slight with regard to her looks, but when he starts attacking Ben Carson as saying that he has the mind of a sexual predator,
Yeah,
that's
child
going
molester.
way over the top.
Child molester.
I mean, he has. I mean, you have this kind of personal attack. People don't want to hear that sort of thing. They want to hear what kind of serious solutions you have with regard to the problems confronting this country today. And so I think he needs, I think what's going to happen is he's going to self-destruct eventually. I don't know how long you can continue to go on this pattern. You can grab headlines, but I think you're going to have Trump fatigue setting in eventually, if that's what he continues to do.
Well, that's what a lot of people have thought, that the fatigue factor would play out, but it doesn't seem that it has so far. What did you think about the comments about John McCain not being a hero?
I really think it's so tangential that you don't have to say those kinds of things. I mean, it deflects away from the issue. What he is apparently doing is, if somebody attacks him, he'll come back with a personal ad hominem attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that lowers the level of political discourse in the country.
Yeah, it really. I couldn't disagree with you on that one,
Yeah.
Gary. Let's take a break here, and we want to invite your phone calls as well. If you have some comments or some questions, some thoughts that you want to share with us, that you want to talk to Gary about them, don't hesitate to call when we come back. That number is 547-8726. Back in a moment here on this Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, if you want to join our conversation with Gary Bullert, CBC political science professor, give us a call, 547-8726. A couple weeks ago, Gary, I really wanted to talk with you about Paul Ryan as the new Speaker of the House, and we can still talk about him. What's going to happen over this next year? I mean, Paul Ryan's already said he's not going to touch immigration. He agreed to that as part of the deal. He's got to deal with this formidable group called the Freedom Caucus, the extreme conservative group. Is anything going to happen? Is anything going to happen in the next year?
Well, what Paul Ryan has said he's going to do, and again, there's a big difference between saying you're going to do something and actually carrying it out, is to propose bills and to put them on Barack Obama's desk and see whether he vetoes it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if the bills are popular and plausible, the Democrats could be painted into a corner. Or Hillary's problem would be this: is she going to defend Barack Obama's record, or is she going to say we're going to have hope and change? She's going to distance herself from Obama. If she does that, she may alienate the base of the Democratic Party. But if she ties her candidacy to Barack Obama, I'm not sure that's going to serve her well either. So she's in a dilemma with regard to that, and whether the Republicans can exploit that is something yet to be seen. I do believe that the Democrats are going to be more unified as a party than the Republicans will be in 2016, and that's certainly helped them in the past.
Oh, well, that's been multiplied and demonstrated
that's right.
so many times already. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure a lot of other people would like to see issues voted on, would like to see people in a position to have to take a position. I think that that's positive for everyone. Then we as citizens end up seeing how people are willing to use their vote on an important issue. I would love to see immigration brought up, but that's not going to happen. So what else are we going to have? Repeal of Obamacare for the 51st time, or what?
Well, the Republicans could put that on the docket, and the mentality of Boehner and McConnell was the following: well, if we put it on the docket, Barack Obama's going to veto it anyway. But the point would be that you'd force him to veto a bill that might be popularly supported by a large number of people, and then you'd have something on the record as for a person. You have an issue there that could serve as a debating point among the candidates.
Yeah, Gary, why can't we have a let's fix the Affordable Care Act, let's improve it versus just eliminating it? That seems kind of crazy now when we have 16 million people who are on insurance today who were not before. So we have, I'm confused by that.
Well, I mean, my view is that Hillary Clinton may offer something of that sort. She may say that, well, there have been a lot of rough edges, a lot of problems that have emerged with regard to the entire Obamacare process. If you want to keep your insurance policy, you can do so, and how that was not really an accurate portrayal of what was going to transpire. She can say that, well, I'm going to, make needed changes in Obamacare, and that might be something that would be a good selling point on her behalf, where she said, well, no policy is written in cement. A policy of this magnitude, involving 1/6 of the gross national product of the country, it's going to have glitches, problems that emerge. I'm going to address those and make constructive changes.
Right. It seems that improvements could be made there, absolutely. But it's kind of like one or the other. It's yes or no. I like the in betweens.
Right.
All right. So healthcare and immigration. What's another top issue that we can think about for the next year that either Paul Ryan might take up and create a vote in the House on, or that you would see the candidates for president tackling?
Well, foreign policy
Okay.
is another issue, and this may, in some respects, enable Rand Paul to get out of the mire that he happens to be in, because he has a very different perspective on foreign policy than most of the other candidates. In other words, he's an anti-interventionist. The other ones have said, well, we should just go in there and bomb them, or we should put boots on the ground, so on and so forth. So Paul could become much more visible in the campaign if that particular issue really rises to the level of being critical for the American people.
I believe the question was,
why did
the Democrats had the House for 6 years? It appeared that the issue of immigration was
Yes.
never brought up.
Yes.
And now that the Republicans are, it appears to be in the forefront every day.
Right. Well, what's in the forefront, though, is people complaining about it, but not necessarily any piece of legislation to get behind. But I think that's the issue of immigration has been a problem for the past 2 decades. So yes, I think the caller is that's a very fair question. Why wasn't it brought up before to the point of legislation when the Democrats were in control?
I would respond by saying that the key legislative achievement of Barack Obama was the Obamacare. So they focus on that. I mean, you have to be selective. You can't do everything at once. So he prioritized that, and so immigration was something that he himself said, well, we're not going to deal with that right now, or the votes aren't there, something of that sort. But neither the Republicans nor the Democrats have really taken the forefront in addressing that issue seriously. It didn't happen during the Bush administration either.
Yeah. But we like to kick it around. I mean, it's a very, very convenient topic to kick around in our dissatisfaction with people that are here in this country that legitimately should not be. But the other balance of that I've just been trying to figure out myself is that it's almost like we don't have enough workers. We don't have enough workers for jobs that are out there. I mean, over and over and over again, we're hearing that people don't want certain jobs, so they go to other folks that are here illegally, or we don't have enough qualified people for jobs.
Well, we have 94 million Americans that are unemployed.
Well,
And in shaping an immigration policy, you might want to ask the following question: what kind of immigrant is going to serve the American national interests?
yes.
And we have people that are highly skilled coming from other countries. That's what Bill Gates wants. He doesn't really care that much about the people who are going to work in highly intensive labor jobs. And so what happens is that you have this race to the bottom, where if you have wave upon wave of new immigrants moving into the country, they simply lower the cost of labor. And that really harms the people that are already here. That's why, from my way of thinking, and I agree with Cedar Chavez about all of this, is that you have a situation where you can have a stable labor force, you pay them enough to make that job attractive, and even if it costs American consumers 25% more when they go to the grocery store, it would be a price worth paying. caller embodies a rather pervasive feeling in this country, that the government is not capable, for one reason or other, to deal concretely with the issues that confront us, involving Medicare, Social Security. You have open borders with the illegal immigration. All of these kinds of issues are such that people are angry. They feel that the government is not really addressing their concerns. They're just kicking the can down the road. They operate on the basis of what can I do today to help myself get reelected, instead of taking a firm stance on serious issues that are very difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be more pervasive in the Republican and the GOP party as opposed to Democrats? Because, as you were saying, it's going to be much more difficult for the Republicans to be united, because you seem to have, you've got the Tea Party and the more conservatives, you've got the people that are perhaps disrespectfully called rhinos, Republicans in names only. Is that part of why a lot of people think the party is split, is because of that dissatisfaction?
Well, there could be a conflict on the side of the Democratic Party. I mean, Hillary Clinton has a pedigree as a, quote, neoliberal, someone who wants to have government by experts, having technocratic solutions to all of our problems. And Barack Obama comes from a very different wing of the party. He puts values above economics. You look at something like the Keystone Pipeline being a signature example of that. And so you can see perhaps that split emerging. That's how much do the grassroots activists that were the fuel of Barack Obama's political success, how enthusiastic are they going to be with regard to Hillary Clinton, who's rushing as far to the left as she can to, that was a mistake that she thought she made in 2008. Do they believe that she's just posturing for political purposes? Do they trust her? In my view, what will happen is perhaps a lot of Democrats will sit on their hands this time around, which was the problem that the Republicans had in 2012.
Yeah.
We got to take a break here. But when we come back, can we talk a little bit about actual problem solving for any issues like this? Takes folks from both sides deciding that they will come to a conclusion together. We'll be back in a moment here on Meet in the Middle. Welcome back. Friday the 13th, my guest is Gary Bullert, a political science professor from Columbia Basin College. And one of the things that we were talking about during the break is all of us individually hold very strong beliefs, and those beliefs seem to be getting stronger and stronger, and we seem to be set in our ways more. I know I'm incredibly idealistic, but at some point, are we not going to say solving a problem is actually more important than me holding on to my individual position about it? I am willing to give up some of my positions on something. Why don't we have a candidate that speaks that language?
Well, when I teach my political science classes, I attempt to do the following. I attempt to broaden people's reading lists so they don't live in a bubble.
Yeah.
That what they need to do is to read the positions taken by both sides on an issue. And so many people just turn into, they turn on Fox or MSNBC because it reinforces their own political enthusiasms. They're never really aware of what the other side is saying. Now, you can't begin a communication process until that situation ends. And what I try to do when people are asked to write a persuasive essay is you have to address the counter arguments of your opponents. You just don't ignore them. Can you give reasons and evidence that are plausible to support your position? So mostly we have people that just want to play to the choir. They simply tell people what they want to hear, and they don't really hear anybody else. And that really creates a situation where there isn't the kind of discussion seriously that can address the problems of this country in an effective way.
Yeah. And that seems to happen a lot as presidential politics proceed, is the candidates speak to the choir. They speak to what people want to hear versus the idea of here's how we could work together to make it happen. I don't know. So it's going to happen. It's going to change, Gary. Mark my words. I hope it's in my lifetime, and I believe it will, because the pendulum swings, and it will swing back.
Well, one of the things that's happened in the last number of campaigns is that it used to be the common wisdom that you run to the right or the left in the primary
Yes.
election, and then you move to the center in the general election.
Mhm.
Well, that's not necessarily true anymore, because our campaigns become what I refer to as mobilization elections. Is what you try to do is to get every member of your party to vote.
Yes.
And the party that can gain the greatest turnout is the one that's going to win. And Barack Obama simply out-organized on the grassroots level Mitt Romney, who had circles around him. And so the mobilization campaign means that you want to throw red meat at the people that are in your party, and you don't pay any attention to independents or people that are undecided, or try to attract votes from the opposing party.
Mhm.
And in many respects, that simply creates the kind of balkanization that I talked about before.
Yeah. So we need to be independent thinkers, and we need to move more towards that. Hey, so let me ask you, since you stood in front of a class for some 25 years, have you seen the students' attitudes or interest in politics change at all in 25 years?
Well, the Tri-City Herald ritualistically did its editorial about the low voter turnout
Yes.
in the local elections. And the turnout that is the lowest with regard to age groups is the 18 to 24-year-olds. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for it, and I'm being idealistic now, is that you do not have civic education, the idea of having informed, engaged citizens participating in our political process. That's fallen through the cracks in the K through 12 system. It's been marginalized. And vocational education of one sort or the other has been put to in the top of the ladder. You don't have any kind of Wassel test on civic education, and so I think to encourage students to understand that what's going on right now is going to have an impact upon them, both immediately and the foreseeable future, so that they'll be more interested and concerned with politics. One of the things that I do in my class is how do you get engaged in politics? There are a variety of ways, and what I have my students do is to write a letter to the editor of the Tri-City Herald. I said, now you're participating in the political process. You're trying to state a point of view and get other people to agree with you. And there's a way to do that. It's not engage in ad hominem attacks or other things. You have to try to appeal to their better natures.
So you're talking about, we're going way back to, K through 12 education, but, so those are the least participating age group in voting, but we have a lot of people who are 45 and older who have traditionally voted a lot more, and they're not voting either.
Yeah, we have some people, in fact the author of my textbook makes this claim, that non-voting is actually a good thing, because people are satisfied with the status quo. And if they weren't, they would go to the polls as a protest vote. My answer to that is nonsense. My answer to that is we have a government that's based upon the principle of consent of the government. And if we don't have people that are willing to vote with regard to all the other benefits that they receive in this society, there's something radically wrong with the situation. I would say that voting is not just a right, it's a responsibility and a duty. And it's not just voting, but it's voting on the basis of having an informed vote, where you're really knowledgeable of the candidates and the issues, rather than just going to deliver your ballot with a smiley face on your lapel.
Gary Bullert, thank you for joining us today. Really enjoyed talking about politics with you. Let's do it again sometime soon.
Okay. I enjoyed this.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us.